Hello and welcome back to this damn full idealistic crusade. In this video, I'm doing yet another epic haul from McKay's Bookstore as I work through the big pile of trade credit that I received during their 50th anniversary celebration, where they gave people up to $800 in trade credit if they made it to different stores within the same day. So I'm nearing the end of this trade credit, but once again, I went in and sort of rated my particular sections that I focused on and found a ton of items that were all free. So needless to say, it's basically like a miniature shopping spree every time I go in, and I still have some trade credit and you can get some incredible deals. So to start with a couple of books I picked up, this one I've been really wanting to read because I love what the authors have done with their other unauthorized oral histories. So this is Secrets of the Force by Edward Gross and Mark Altman, who did the incredible Nobody Does It Better book on the Bond films. They did 2 volumes of the same style book for Star Trek. They've done a variety of others, and I think they're just coming out with one on the Indiana Jones series. But if you haven't read one of these, they are essentially interviews with all kinds of original cast and crew members, writers, directors, different personnel, and then other commentators outside the various project. But basically, it's giving you a no frills, very off the cuff, raw history as the actual comments are laid out in chronological order, talking about the particular subject, this being a volume on the Star Wars saga. So this is surprisingly all in one volume, and unlike the Trek volume that covered 2, but these are really worth their weight in gold because it's getting all kinds of different viewpoints all condensed down into one source, whether they're vintage or new interviews conducted for this book. And I really love this particular style. Once you read one of these, you really get the feel for it. And then if you see if there's another volume on a favorite subject or film series of yours, then you're super excited to dive in. So this is just one I've been really wanting to get because it's on the Star Wars films. Then next I picked up a number of series books. This one I was really excited to get because I've always wanted to read all of the classic Saint novels by Leslie Charteris, but also I've never seen the Thomas and Mercer current editions actually in print anywhere, because I think these are mostly done as print on demand through Amazon. But I've been curious to see one of these up close to see if it was worth picking up all the books in this edition. So this is The Saint Closes the Case, which is technically, I believe, the third Saint story, if you count the first story, Meet the Tiger, which is usually not included in terms of the canonical stories and isn't published as part of this series. But this is actually a quite solid edition in terms of the overall feel and weight, and it has a nice custom foreword and a matching artwork style to all the other books in this particular Thomas and Mercer series. And I've never seen one in person before or even seen a really good photo of one of these editions. So now that I know that these are really nice, I'm going to pick up the rest of the series in this edition. Of course, I also usually look for the primary series I like to collect, and so over time I've been amassing more of a Nancy Drew collection that I'd like to at least get a complete set of original and revised texts for the main series. So I had a really nice flashlight copy of book 26, The Clue of the Leaning Chimney, and this is actually a 1998 printing in the flashlight, so that means it's really solid. And also, I haven't seen a lot of flashlight copies of some of the later books and good printings that weren't expensive. So anytime I see a Nancy or Hardy Boys edition that's in good shape and is cheap, and in this case free, well, then it's a no-brainer. They did have a Hardy Boys volume I needed. For the boys themselves, I found volume 37 in the Undercover Brothers series, so I've been chipping away at getting this particular later series. But as you can see, when they pop up at McKay's, they are already generally speaking, extraordinarily cheap to begin with, which is great because these are increasingly getting harder to find at a good price because they started going out of print, just like how we saw with the overall disappearance of the end of the digest books. So over time, each of the newer series that they start coming out with starts to run its course, and then it starts drying up. So then it's great when you can find books you need in series collecting, and they're only 50 cents, which then, of course, was free. Admittedly, this was more of a book that I didn't really need need because I have the original hardcover edition, but in terms of Bond novels, I like to try and have each of the main novels in at least one hardcover and one paperback edition, so I don't have to carry the hardcover edition around. So they had a nice copy of the US paperback for Devil May Care, the Sebastian Faulks writing as Ian Fleming novel in the continuation books, and this is, pretty decent in terms of artwork. It looks pretty good and is mostly red like the US first edition, but actually, while this book has a nice UK cover design and a nice paperback, this seems a little generic, and actually I think the American first edition hardcover that I've had ever since it came out is actually the best artwork, but still I couldn't say no to a decent paperback copy just to finally have a paperback version. Then in terms of DVD, they once again had a complete restock of the classic style, and I'm weak, and on top of that there were once again a ton of Warner Archive MOD titles mixed in, including some rarer ones, some ones I've been really wanting to pick up, and some of even the multi-feature sets. So that trade credit came into good use. So to go through these, first with notable directors, they had the archive release of Mannequin, directed by Frank Borzage, and this of course is most notable for being the one major pairing between Joan Crawford and Spencer Tracy, and it's been on my wish list for quite some time. From the great Victor Fleming is of course the classic iconic Red Dust, here with a nice usage of the original poster art. This is another that the archive has done that has just been on my wish list for way too long, although since this is such an iconic title, this is definitely one that I think at some point might see an archive Blu-ray upgrade. For Henry Hathaway, they had a title that I really enjoyed on the Laserdisc box set that I have it on, but that is The Real Glory, which is a fascinating Gary Cooper vehicle. It's also a sort of jungle / military adventure picture, which is it's an interesting blend, and I did enjoy getting to see it on Laserdisc. And so I've had the archive DVD on my wish list, and this is much less common because of course it's part of the Goldwyn line, if you can see that there. It was released by Goldwyn on Laserdisc anyway as part of their imprint, so this is just part of the Goldwyn library that the archive has done at least a solid release of. They've done some various titles, but this is an interesting, very little discussed picture that, again, I just really enjoyed getting to see on Laserdisc. It's an odd, sort of interesting mixture of styles and genres, so I was happy to pick up the archive DVD. They did have a Sony MOD title, which of course is Hot Blood, directed by the legendary Nicholas Ray, and I'm determined to see or have a copy of every Ray film, so this was a must. Although Sony titles of Scope films aren't always necessarily letterboxed, so it is possible. I'm not sure if this is letterboxed or pan and scanned, but I don't really know of this having any other major release. Sometimes you find an archive title for so cheap that it's a must, and of course has some big names involved. So this is H.M. Pullum Esquire, directed by the great King Vidor, and based on a John Marquand novel. So this looked too interesting for words, and again, it's a Warner Archive release of a classic title I haven't gotten to see yet from a great director for less than $3, which was actually free, so it goes in the basket. This is a title I've actually wanted to see for some time, which is Going Hollywood, produced by Walter Wanger and directed by the great Raoul Walsh. But this is a musical with Bing Crosby and Marion Davies, and it's sort of sending up Hollywood tropes and things, so it's just too fascinating for words, and this was still sealed, so occasionally you run into a great bargain on even an MOD title that's still in the shrink wrap, which is just amazing. Then of course I found even more archive DVD titles. This first one is 1930's The Widow from Chicago from 1930, which is actually Eddie G. Robinson's first film at Warner, so this is actually before Little Caesar. We have beautiful original artwork on the front and the more modern black cover for the rear, but this goes hand in hand, of course, with the fantastic Warner Gangster DVD sets and is essential for all Warner Gangsters fans. But I was really excited to find this because this has been on my watch list for far too long. Then really nicely, as part of my quest to see all of Carole Lombard's films, they had 1934's The Gay Bride with beautiful poster artwork, and this again was another still sealed archive MOD DVD title at McKay's for dirt cheap. So this just flew into my basket. They also had 1939's In Name Only, which is the one major pairing between Lombard and Cary Grant. This is a film that I saw many years ago, I believe on TCM, and have been really wanting to get on this archive DVD release. So it was really amazing to find these mixed in. Again, there was a restock in the classic section, and I start seeing archive spines poking out, and I have a basket, and I have a ton of trade credit, so this is great. They also had 1939's Lady of the Tropics, which is essentially the follow-up or the next film that Hedy Lamarr was in after the classic Algiers, but this also has a screenplay by Ben Hecht and has been a film on my to-watch list for far too long, so it was fantastic to find this on the restocked classics shelf. They also had 1945's China Sky, based on a Pearl S. Buck novel, of course, sort of following in the similar vein as her famous The Good Earth, and then also, of course, Dragon Seed. So this is a film I've always wanted to see, and it has a phenomenal cast headed by Randolph Scott. So this was another really lovely surprise archive DVD find for dirt cheap. This is one of the archive titles I've been meaning to get for far too long, which is The Two Mrs. Carols, which is one of the major later career or later 40s Bogart vehicles. That is one of his better later Warner films. This has a nice or nicer cover because, of course, it's credited as a remastered edition, and this would definitely be another title that I could see the archive updating to Blu-ray at some point. This was another surprise. This is the release of Onion Head, which is basically the sort of follow-up for Andy Griffith to his classic breakout in No Time for Sergeants. This is basically the follow-up that's more of the same with a different setting. So I've never gotten to see this, so it just looked like another lovely must. And it's not like you find Warner Archive DVDs for less than $5 all the time, especially when you have a ton of free trade credits. So this went in the basket. And then, as I mentioned, there were also some of the archive multi-feature collections, which you don't see on the used market for sure, especially not out in the wild. This one I had heard of and was rather interested to check out, but never thought I'd stumble across it in the local bookstore. And that is the Brass Bancroft of the Secret Service Mysteries collection, which is all 4 of the programmer films that starred Ronald Reagan in 1939 and 1940 as a U.S. secret agent of sorts. And if there's any sort of vintage spy film, I have to see it. And I think it's fascinating seeing the pre-war Warner's films starring Ronald Reagan. It's a completely different experience and kind of uncanny when you're used to the sort of modern view of Reagan in terms of the political realm. And he had quite a charming screen persona in the pre-war Warner's period. They were building him up to be a big star. And so here he had a series of B programmer films as essentially an American spy. And I've just been super curious to check this out. So this is 4 films spread across 2 discs in the usual standard archive style. And again, as far as I know, I don't think this really has another physical media release. Then really surprisingly, they had the Buster Keaton triple feature collection of some of his early talkies done for MGM. And while, of course, Keaton famously signed a deal that basically took away a lot of his creative control, there is a great material to be found in his talkies, which are nowhere near as much talked about or discussed as his silent masterworks. So this is a really important archive collection with really lovely artwork that also has nice custom artwork of Buster there on the rear. This brings together 3 films, and it's nicely spread across 2 discs, which actually have the really cute artwork on the disc labels. This is just another Warner archive title that's been on my wish list for far too long, and I certainly didn't expect to see it on the shelf. This last one is a Rome Group title, and the reason why I picked this up is I am actually reviewing the Kino Lorber release of the Mr. Wong films. So this is the Rome Group release of the complete Mr. Wong series. This is really important because it does actually include the last film, Phantom of Chinatown, which stars the great Key Luke instead of Boris Karloff, and unfortunately that film was not included in the Kino set, seemingly due to licensing reasons, it seems. So unfortunately that set is not complete, and this Rome Group release, as far as I was always aware, it was one of the best options for these films before the Kino release of the others from newer scans. These were, of course, monogram films patterned after the Charlie Chan series, and though their reputation isn't that great outside of having the incredible presence of Karloff, I think once you get past the expository nature of the first film, they all have their own charm, and in particular, the last couple of the Karloff starring ones are really fun. But in particular, I got this because I wanted to look at the transfers, compare it to what's on the Kino release, but I also wanted to get a copy of Phantom of Chinatown. Now, this is from 1999, so it's an early DVD from Roan, so the label's pretty straightforward, and it's in this older style 2-disc case. That's the thicker style with 2 clasps, but we do have a nice little insert that they would do of course, the chapter listings. I really love that they have the image of Karloff as Wong as the underlying image underneath the chapters to give it some flavor of the release. And of course, here is disc 2, and then the rear cover. Now, these being monogram films, they've pretty much been stuck in public domain crappy transfer hell and are on just countless really crummy releases. But again, outside of the new Kino Blu-ray, the Roan Group release is, I think, about the best of the public domain releases. And also, this gets you Phantom of Chinatown, which is not part of the Kino set. I'm also curious to check out the transfers here because, unfortunately, there are some encoding issues on the Kino Blu-ray set, which are quite unfortunate, marring otherwise quite beautiful-looking new scans of films that have just never gotten any sort of attention or love given to them. And then last but certainly not least, I saw a box set poking out of the TV series shelf, and this is a more modern box that actually brings together the complete series, and that means I didn't have to get all of the exorbitantly expensive limited release later season DVD sets that I was missing. So I did pick up the complete Maverick release. This is a modern Warner Brothers repackaging that actually puts it in a nice box set. It's very simple, and also this is using the same artwork as the season 1 DVD release that I have. But what's been sucky about the Maverick releases is that all the DVDs are pretty much done in the same fashion, but only the first 2 seasons got a wide release. And so seasons 3, 4, and 5 were more done like an archive style release in terms of the pricing being much more exorbitant, and you could only order them online, and then they go in and out of print. So it's actually quite expensive. So I've never gotten the others. So this complete set is the exact same disc and all nicely together in one box at a much more affordable price, which of course in this instance was free, so I couldn't say no. So I'll probably be trading in my copies of the standalone seasons that I have. And the real reason why I desperately wanted to get the later seasons is, of course, they starred Roger Moore as the English cousin, and I'm a Roger Moore fanatic, and so this was just a big missing chunk of my Roger Moore shelf. Now, of course, this being a modern complete series repackaging, while we do get a nice enough simple slip box, the discs themselves are in the dreaded Epic pack. So that means, of course, you have to worry about scratched surfaces, cracks, and also worry about getting your discs in and out because they are in these atrociously designed packages. However, I will admit, while this is straightforward, simple, no frills, with just a basic episode listing on the interior, at least this is the type of Epic pack where you can actually lift out the disc hubs themselves. It's all on a connected spine, and you can actually navigate to the disc that you need, and it will lay flat. The actual hubs themselves are a little tight, and it's also very easy to damage your disc because when you take a disc out, the surface of the others is actually exposed because there's these little cutouts, because they were like, no, this isn't terrible and annoying enough. We have to make it even worse. So you always want to be careful when you get one of these, especially used, because you have to actually check through each and every disc. And it's best to find another sort of case to put these in. These are a terrible idea, but at least of the varieties of Epic packs that you find, at least this is the kind that has a solid enough spine and you can navigate easily enough. They also didn't overdo it and try to put all of them on one giant hub or Epic pack that some releases do. So this is at least designed well enough that, as you can see, seasons 1 through 5 are split into 2 that are, relatively equal size. But unfortunately, most modern releases will try to just cram in 5 to 10 seasons of an entire show on the worst epic pack you've ever seen. I think one of the worst examples would be the slate repackaged design of the Star Trek Complete Series DVD releases for Deep Space Nine and Voyager, which used even worse epic packs. And I bought one of those and found out the hard way the horrors of just how bad an epic pack could be. So even though I really hate this style of packaging, at least this is well done enough. And all the discs were in great shape. So this is a great bargain, and it was free, the magic word. So there you have my latest and one of the last epic hauls in this series of epic McKay's hauls from all of this pile of trade credit that I got. It's not a good idea to let me loose in this store with $5 or $10 on a normal day because I will find too much because the media bargains are endless. That's why I refer to it as the black hole of physical media. You simply never know what will turn up there, and the store is just massive. But they did restock their classic sections, and I was able to make this just complete run, specifically of Warner Archive DVD titles that have all been on my to-watch list or wish list for far too long, and it was all free, so I just couldn't stop myself. It's probably good I just stick primarily to a few sections, otherwise I would just try to buy the whole store, which is definitely something a physical media enthusiast will most likely try and do. So as always, I hope my babblings and physical media pickups and once again, yet another epic haul at McKay's Bookstore has been at least somewhat fun and informative. If you do live nearby one of these stores and haven't been, I highly recommend it. Or if you're just passing through or traveling through, you definitely have to stop, but be sure and dedicate several hours, if not the whole day, because each of the stores is quite massive and it will take you quite some time to go through and do your due diligence, because the amount of physical media in just one of these is massive, and the overall discounts and bargains you have on new and used, because there's new discs mixed in as well, is just unbelievable. And again, you simply never know what is going to pop up there. So as always, please do keep supporting independent bookstores and physical media stores by hopefully being able to stop at a McKay's location and check it out if you haven't before. Keep reading print books, keep your disc spinning, and as always, thank you ever so much for watching.